Do we need to click on record, or does it? Here we go.
Excellent. Right, I think we're live. Excellent. Looks like we've got Martin and some other people on. So should we kick off, Chris?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this broadcast with us this morning. So, my name is Chris Sherry. I'm the Regional Vice President from Forescout Technologies. I'm responsible for the EMEA Central region. So, my responsibility is to look after the sales organization across the DAC, Benelux, and Nordic territories. And I'm very pleased to be here with you this morning. Thank you for joining us. I'll pass over to Doug, and he can introduce himself, and then we'll jump into the content that we're going to present with you today.
Good morning. My name's Doug Card. I'm the product manager looking after our segmentation products here in the EMEA region, which of course includes the Nordics. So welcome.
Very cool. All right, thanks, Doug. So, so if you'd like to share the presentation, Doug.
I think the presentation should be sharing. Oh, hold on. There we go.
Perfect. All right. That's good. That's good. So, all right. So, so we're here this morning to talk about network segmentation. But just before we jump into that, I wanted to take a moment just to give you some introduction to Forescout Technologies. You may not be familiar with who Forescout is, but we have been around for over 20 years. So we're certainly not a startup, but we're absolutely thinking and acting like a startup today. We are a publicly listed company. We listed on the NASDAQ market way back in October 2017. And for the last number of years, we've really seen an explosive growth within our business. And I'd just like to take a moment to explain to you why that has been before we get on to dig into the main topic of conversation today. As an organization, we are referenceable and credible at scale. We have over 83 million endpoints under management today across over 3,700 customers globally. And the majority of those customers are tier one organizations, tier one financial services organizations, or very large governmental bodies, or just simply large enterprise organizations. But we have many customers that fall into all sorts of different verticals. And each of those tend to be quite large, complex, and global in nature. And in fact, we are referenceable at scale up to at least 2 million endpoints. We've got some very, very large organizations out there that have deployed Forescout into their global environments that could come up to at least that 2 million endpoint kind of scale. One absolute unique facet of the Forescout solution is that we have a device cloud that contains over 11 million fingerprints of all the different devices that we see as we help to look after our customers' environments out there. And the real unique feature of the device cloud is that it enables us to rapidly auto-classify when we come in and start to deploy into any customer's environment. So if we were to come into a brand new environment and start to deploy and start to talk about how we could give 100% device visibility and control, then the device cloud is something that helps us rapidly see and understand the nature, the context of every single endpoint that is connected to the network. And I engage with all sorts of organizations every day of the week, and I speak quite frequently to CISOs and CIOs out there. And generally speaking, what I find is that when we come into an environment, we find at least 30% more endpoints on the network than they are expecting us to see. And this is because there is a significant rise in the number and type of unmanaged endpoints that are connecting to networks every day. And what Forescout are uniquely able to do is offer you 100% device visibility and control. We enable you to get control of all those endpoints that typically you're blind to. And what we see as we deploy into any environment is that once we give that deep level contextual understanding of what's on your network, our customers rapidly then move to enforcement. They want to take control actions to enable them to feel secure, to be compliant, and to understand who is going where to do what upon their network. And that leads naturally into this topic of network segmentation that we'll talk about today. We have a non-disruptive out-of-band solution. And again, unique to Forescout, we are an agentless solution. So in 2018, we actually acquired an organization called Security Matters. So I can truly say to you today that we offer an end-to-end solution across the extended enterprise. So from campus, data center, cloud, and into the OT environments, we are able to offer you this device visibility and control, this ability to see and understand what is connected to your network. Historically, we were very much focused on the IP network. With the acquisition of Security Matters, we can see now down into industrial control systems, hop off the IP network and down into SCADA networks and similar environments. And that's critically important to our portfolio. We have a very high customer satisfaction rate. So of those 3,700 customers that we have, many of those are very willing and able to offer references. And you can see from our net promoter score here, we have a very high score. It's way above the industry average, which we're very proud of, that not only do we offer a very rapid time to value, but we're then in a very, very strong position to ensure successful implementation of our technology. So I've mentioned that over the last few years, we've seen a rapid rise in our business, but why is that? Well, there's three macro trends that are really driving the need for 100% device visibility and control. The first is just a sheer explosion of the number of devices that are connecting to the network. And we're not now just talking about your traditional managed endpoints like your Windows laptops or your Macs or your desktops, but we're seeing a rise in the sheer diversity of the number of devices connecting, which is being driven by the Internet of Things, of course. And in fact, it's forecast that by 2023, the average CIO will be responsible for at least 3 times more things on their network than they were in 2018. And the challenge here, of course, is that these unmanaged endpoints are not discoverable through traditional means. In other words, you can't put an agent onto a webcam or a smart TV or a network refrigerator or a sensor in an OT environment to understand what it is and to talk to it. But with Forescout, with our unique agentless solution across the extended enterprise, we talk to the network, we gather information about what is happening and the context of that endpoint, and we're able to give you back rich contextual information. That is why we're able to say that we can see 100% of the endpoints that are connected to your network. And this is vitally important if you want to build a robust security strategy. This foundational layer of visibility is where it has to begin. If there are any gaps in your knowledge of what's on the network, then of course, that's a weak point in your attack surface. And we want to bridge that and make sure that that no longer exists. The second challenge is just that everything is becoming interconnected. So we do see this convergence of the IT and OT environments. Traditionally, OT will be quite ring-fenced from the IT network. But now, of course, there's a bridge. Data is shared across that bridge. And this convergence causes new attack vectors to manifest itself. And we see lots of examples of where OT environments are being compromised by gaining entry through the IT network. And again, by next year, 70% of OT security we are seeing will be managed directly by the CISO or the CIO. That's a significant shift from where we are today. So increasingly, the CISO or the security organization is responsible for OT and IT. But how can that security organization confidently say to the board that we are secure if you don't have the ability to see everything that's on that network in the first place? Again, we're bridging that gap by giving you that consistent end-to-end visibility across your extended enterprise. And then the third point that's really driving growth for us is that there's an increased need for the automation of important security workflows. Again, next year it's forecast that 70% of large enterprises will include security automation and orchestration capabilities as core requirements. Again, a significant shift from just 2 years ago where the need for automation was as low as 5%. But today, what we see is an ever-increasing number of threats coming in from all different directions that can overload manual process. It can overload small SOC teams as they try to decide what is important and what should they act upon. But with Forescout, we sit in the middle of your security infrastructure, at the heart of your ecosystem, coordinating with your existing security tools. We can ingest alerts from them and take automated action, and we can feed up to those tools the visibility that we're gathering to make sure that you're driving the maximum return on investment from those tools, but also ensuring that you have your whole environment entirely covered. And I've mentioned that network segmentation is one of the hottest topics that we're getting involved with today. In fact, just about every meeting that I get involved with today, network segmentation is coming up. And I think we all acknowledge that network segmentation is not a new concept. It's been around for some time. I think we all understand the importance of controlling what is happening, where people are flowing on your network. But the challenge with network segmentation historically has been a lack of context around what is on my network. How do I understand this great long list of IP addresses and determine where they should be able to communicate to? So with Forescout, with iSegment, we have a unique solution now that can bring and leverage all of the context that we build through that visibility and help you to logically segment your network in a very, very simple way compared to what you've had to do in the past. And we'll integrate with all of the other segmentation technologies that you may already have out there. And that really is the main topic of conversation for us today. We thought it important that we share with you our position around network segmentation, how we can help to drive forward with pace your move towards a fully segmented network so that you can absolutely control who is going where to do what and really restrict any bad actor's ability to laterally move across your network once you gain entry. So Doug, I'm going to hand over to you now, and then we'll dig in a little further into iSegment. And if there are any questions towards the end of this session, we'd be more than happy to answer those for you. So Doug, over to you.
Cool, thanks, Chris. So what I want to talk about today is really the journey that Forescout's been on over the last 3 years around segmentation. So we saw that segmentation has become a top priority for customers. There's a variety of reasons for that, which we'll talk about shortly. But also we realized that it was still a very difficult and troublesome process to move from move a production environment, which is mostly flat, to something that's less flat. The potential risk to operation, but also just the difficulty in analysis was causing a lot of issues about moving to segmentation. So we saw that in the marketplace. We thought, okay, how can we go about solving that? And really the place we started was, well, why are people doing segmentation? And the flowchart on the screen really covers everything. It's either a regulatory driven approach. I need to protect data. I need to provide cyber resilience, principally around financial service markets, trading platforms, international money transfer. So I need to make sure that my environment is protected. And segmentation is a great way to reduce the attack surface, a great way to contain the inevitable breach. But also there's the second part of it, which is, well, a hostile cyber environment is a reality. We're seeing pretty well every type of organization become certainly disrupted from either a ransomware perspective or actually a sort of a targeted type attack. So by using segmentation, we can reduce the likelihood that actually the initial compromise takes place, but ultimately the inevitable happens, and we need to be able to contain the operational space of that attacker, prevent them to move quickly, and that gives the organization time to detect and react to that particular incident. So it is a really effective tool. We've also seen this become really critical in the world of IoT. These are devices that we can't manage in a traditional way, and we actually often can't actually go and remove the vulnerabilities because they're inherent within the platform. And therefore, we need to actually put controls around that particular device. And the same, of course, is true in operational technology space, manufacturing, oil and gas, utility type space. We actually have to put the protections outside the platform itself. So this is sort of a big critical move. The next sort of macro trend we noticed was the way people approach segmentation. And really, it's been from a bottom-up approach. I'm going to look at a particular part of my network. I'm going to look at a particular application and try and protect that. And it seems to work initially. We maybe get protection around a particular application, but the challenge is, the ransomware doesn't care. It will just go to every other single part of the environment. So we end up with a lot of effort to get not very much protection. And what we've seen is, with the move towards zero trust, actually we need to flip that around. We need to look at this from an enterprise-wide perspective. We need to look at this from a business process perspective. What will be impacted if I were to have a compromise, and actually address it top down. And a really good example is, again, in operational technology. If I start off trying to protect an individual PLC, it's actually quite a bit of work to understand that data flow. But I only protect a very, very small part of my environment. The rest of my manufacturing facilities are now exposed. If I start at the top and say, right, I'm going to focus on the IT-OT interface, the number one way that OT is impacted, a threat coming in from the IT space, that gives a lot of value quickly. If I then focus on separating out individual factories from each other, again, that gives constrains the events to just a small part of my organization. And the same is true across the IT space. I want to look at those big chunks, focus on them, and get a lot of value quickly from the segmentation efforts. So this sort of is the number one change that we're seeing in the marketplace. It's something that we've embedded into our platform, the ability to get a lot of protection quickly by taking these sort of broad-based steps. Okay, so the next sort of trend and sort of actually basic sort of bit of theory really is we need to understand the things that we have. What are they? What is the context of that particular device? But importantly, we need to understand those interactions. And we need to understand the interactions in the context of what they mean from a business perspective. And a really good example is Telnet. Telnet is essentially an insecure protocol. It shouldn't be used. Therefore, if we see that inside our environment as an interaction, it's almost certainly a risky type of interaction. Whether it's malicious or malign is another issue, but it's something that we need to focus on. We need to start to move the protocol to the right interactions. I need to understand the context of the devices and how they interact in real time to get a full view of how the environment is working today. So this sort of then builds onto the top that, okay, I now need to start to classify devices. And really the traditional approach has been zones. Hey, this part of my network's trusted, this part of my network's untrusted, sort of internet, internal network is the ultimate example, but different parts of my network have different degrees of trust. And really that whole concept has gone out the window. We now have people bringing their own devices. We have printers, we have smart televisions that are full running computers. We have manufacturing facilities. We have all of these different components all sitting on our inside network or external networks or in the cloud, wherever. And we need to move into a mindset of what the device is important, not necessarily where it is from a interaction perspective. So segmentation has to become device-centric. If we look at the diagram on the right, it's just PCI segmentation guidance, so fairly prescriptive. But we see, the corporate LAN is traditionally a sort of a flat corporate LAN. But now, from PCI perspective, this admin workstation needs to be treated separately. We need to be able to pull out this device and understand what it is as a separate entity from all the other devices on that LAN. So this is sort of a really important change in our thinking. And actually, the very same thing is true from the server end or the workload end. We no longer have these monotonic type data centers that are trusted. Within that data center, there are different applications. Some have customer data, some don't. Some are critical, some are not. And it's not just in the data center, it's in the cloud, it's in container, it's serverless, it's all of these different platforms now make up our environment, and that we need to take or move away from this zone-based methodology into I want to understand what the entity is, what it means to me, and use that as the component to understand how I need to segment my environment. which sort of naturally draws us on to, the context part of this. Okay, that is an admin workstation in the bottom right, as from a PCI perspective, but it also has a context. Is there a host firewall? Is it patched? Is it antivirus? These are all requirements from PCI. And depending on actually the current state of that device, I may wish to make different segmentation decisions. The same is true for IoT devices. Are they vulnerable? Are they compromised? That will change my real-time decision about how I want to deal with my device. In the operational technology world, I have devices that I absolutely never want to touch or interact. And that, again, will inform my decision about what I want to do from a segmentation perspective. Okay, I've seen a compromise, but I'm not going to touch it because I know that it will impact production. I need to deal with this in a different way. So the context and segmentation are critically tied together in making business valid decisions. What does it mean for the operation of the business, and how am I going to deal with these particular devices? And then we move on to the concept, okay, I now sort of have my environment, I understand it, I know what's good and bad. Now I need to actually go and put some enforcement in place. And it gets really difficult at this point. If we just look at this simple diagram here, it's an admin workstation going to a jump host to make a change inside a protected environment, the CDE, cardholder data environment here. We have 6 sort of network layer enforcement points on that simple interaction. These are 6 different technologies that I need to bring together and align to create an effective security control. Now that's excluding just the user permissions, etc., and the application layer controls on the jump box, and actually the target system itself. So this is a really big challenge for us. Most people think about bottom-up type segmentation. I'm going to use VLANs. Okay, but hold on, this device talks to the data center. It talks to the cloud. I need to bring together all of these different controls to create a coherent segmentation strategy. And this is one of the big reasons why bottom-up strategies fail. They only ever deal with part of the problem that you're trying to solve. So if we sort of start to bring this all together, really this is the whole problem that we're trying to solve. The interactions inside our environment are east-west, north-south. Users talk to the data center. Users may talk to users with peer-to-peer traffic, like Tanium. They're actually sharing patches and data between each other. We have IoT devices interacting with sensors at the same component, also connecting to back-end systems. Data center applications not only talk to the users, but they talk to DNS, DHCP, other applications. So we actually need to think about segmentation as this holistic solution. It is the entire set, and actually look at the critical business processes that we're trying to protect. We then need to look at all of the different technologies that you already have, almost certainly inside your environment, to actually align those and bring protection in place. So this is really the approach we've taken to segmentation. It is not, a firewall is not the whole solution. Networking or SDN is not the whole solution. Cloud-based security groups are not the whole solution. They're all just a component of a holistic segmentation solution. So we get into this, actually, if you are going to seriously segment an environment, and all of us are dealing with brownfield environments, even if you build a brand new data center, you've still got things that you need to migrate into that, and you've got some legacy. And we have to go through this process. We have to go through this process for 2 reasons. One is I need to make sure my segmentation is effective. And the second thing is I need to make sure that I'm not going to impact the environment. I'm not going to stop a critical business process, because nothing stops a segmentation faster than causing a problem with actually a critical business process. So, the hard bit really is the upfront work. I need to bring together into a platform visibility of everything on my network, what it means to me from a business perspective. I need to bring in the context. Is it vulnerable? Is it patched? Is it actually one of my own devices, or is it a third-party device that is connected, where I don't have less control over it? And I need to bring in how these devices are interacting with each other and look at that as a holistic, single platform. Okay, this is what my environment is today. And that's step number one. Step number two is I now need to step back out of the IT world and look at this from a business process perspective. I want to protect my customer data. Okay, let's focus down on the systems where the customer data is. Let's focus down on the controls that we want to apply and actually develop policies in a business context. I have to abstract this out of the technology layer. Otherwise, ultimately, segmentation will fail. If I write this in the form of a firewall rule set, firewalls have no concept of device state. So, okay, I'm already missing information. If I write this in the context of an ACL for a switch, they have no context of users. They only understand IP addresses and ports and protocols. That's it. They miss the whole business context. So I need to extract this out into what is actually my pure segmentation goals and bring that together into a single platform. The next thing I need to do is actually say, what would happen if I were to apply these controls to my environment? And the stark reality is you never get these policies right the first time. You'll always find two things. One is traffic that we actually weren't aware of. Now, even the application owners didn't know that these applications behave this way. We had a customer recently who didn't know that endpoints talk to other endpoints because they're running Tanium and it has a peer-to-peer protocol. They were just going to isolate all of their endpoints from each other. Well, it would have broken a critical application that they rely on for patch distribution and security management. So having the ability to say what would happen if my policy was applied to my environment and finding the other traffic that I wasn't aware of is critical, but also it gives you the first view of I'm now going to find bad things. I'm going to find risky behavior, people accessing systems using Telnet instead of SSH. I'm going to see people using or contractors connecting directly into back-end systems instead of going through jump hosts. So I can immediately get value and detect that risky behavior and do something about it. So these first three steps are really critical for the segmentation journey. It's the understanding, the planning, the simulation that allows you then to move into, right, I can now start to develop my technical controls. I can now start to apply policy and start to do some enforcement and actually do that from a position of knowledge. I know that this is an effective control. I know that it's not going to impact the production environment. And then you get into the other stark reality of IT, which is things break. People misconfigure things. It's just the reality. And therefore, we have to have this ongoing assurance function. It says, I need to continuously monitor this environment to make sure that the policy that I intended is actually taking place. And it's a critical step from an assurance internal perspective, but it's very effective if you have any form of external assurance. If a supplier or a customer comes to you and says, hey, how do you know your security controls are effective? Well, I constantly monitor them. If they do deviate from my intention, I will detect that and I will be able to respond to that before it becomes a major incident. So this is sort of the whole journey that you're going to go through. We've really focused the Forescout platform on the upfront part. We already actually have most of those integrations with networking on the campus, the data center, in the cloud, essentially across the entire environment. So we already do a lot of this orchestration today. Then we focused on the ongoing assurance at the back end to sort of build this into a full end-to-end segmentation platform. I'm going to pause here quickly for questions before we go and actually have a look at the product live. So any questions from the attendees? Okay.
It's for John.
No, okay, that was you, Chris, making some noise. So
Yeah.
I thought that was someone else asking a question. So we've had a couple of problems getting the sharing the live demo on this platform. It seems to cut off the presenter audio when we do that. So I'm actually going to go through and click through some canned slides, unfortunately. But if any attendees on this session want to go through and have a proper demo in the future, then please just get in touch and we'll absolutely do a live demo, not inside this particular platform itself. So let me move forward. A moment here. Cool. Okay, so this is the home screen of our segmentation workflow. And what we have here is pretty straightforward. We have sources. So we have users, we have mobile devices, we have IT, we have OT type platforms. Then we have destinations across the top. And of course, this matrix is fully configurable to the way that your organization looks. So if you're a manufacturing organization, this will be heavily focused around OT and IT type functions. If you're a retail organization, this will be structured around point of sale, logistics, manufacturing type. So it's really designed to represent your organization the way that you see yourselves. So we can build out this matrix to show exactly how you view yourselves. Okay, so first thing we want to do is start to try and solve a couple of problems. And what we can do here is drill down into, say, the IoT devices. I want to understand how they're behaving, and I want to move my IoT devices into zero trust. And just by clicking on the IoT devices, we can drill down into seeing all the different types of devices and how they're behaving. So I can see how my IP cameras are interacting with the HR system. I can see it interacting with other sort of network devices and also the internet. So within one click, I've actually understood a lot of information. And really the key point here is that we're looking at this from top down. We're not starting with IP to IP traffic flow because there's huge amounts of that. We're starting from a business context to a business context flow. And this is much more important. How my IP cameras and my printers are talking to the internet. That's really important to me. So I can start to drill down into that and see, okay, my printers are using FTP to the internet, they're using NTP. Like NTP, we should always use internal clocks. So I'm actually going to have to go and talk to the desktop services people and get them to reconfigure it. And I'm going to look into the FTP. And if I want to, I can drill right down into the individual printers and the individual traffic that's making that up. So within a couple of clicks, I can actually understand behavior. Let's also look at a second example here, which is really the application side. I've got an HR application. I'm going to start to filter this sort of enterprise-wide traffic down to my HR system itself, just so I'm focusing on this one application that's critical to me. I'm going to look at it in the context of everything going on inside the organization. So this is all the traffic across campus, data center, and cloud, operational technology, everything that's associated with this particular application. And now I can use this to drill into what is the user access associated with it. I can see database admins, I can see desktop admins, I can see domain admins. All of these different functions are accessing the different tiers within this particular application, in this case, HR application. And again, we can start to drill down and say, okay, why is my database admin talking to the database tier of my HR system? Well, okay, let's have a look. They're using secure shell. That's fine. You know, database admin connecting to a database using a secure protocol is good. I can tick that traffic as good. We also see the database admin connecting using SQL. So they're querying the database directly, which as an HR database is not good because employee data is in there. That could be, you know, my bank account details, my next of kin, all of this personal data. So this is bad traffic. And then we also see a bit of noise taking place here as well. So we can start to tick the good traffic, and from this, actually drill down and see who's accessing the database, look at the behavior if we want. But more importantly, we can tick this and say, right, let's deny all of this traffic apart from this. This is the good traffic. I'm going to create my segmentation rules directly from the traffic. So again, very quickly, I'm starting to develop my policies in real time. And when we develop the policies, they're written in this abstract language. It is these database users talking to the database tier. It's not IP address to IP address, it's actually these business entities. And we can then start to bring in some great context to say, well, you know what, I want patching agents to be compliant. I want antivirus to be up to date before people go and on the admin workstation, before people actually go and connect to these key systems. I want to make sure I've got basic security assurance in place. And we can start to also set the scope on the destination. So actually, I only care about the production systems, the development systems. There's no data there. It doesn't matter. This rule is specific for our production environment. So we've created this very specific blacklist rule that says, right, you can't connect to the database, the HR system, unless you meet this criteria. And that is exactly what we want to happen from a business perspective. Okay, so we've now got this policy in draft mode. I can escalate this policy into a simulation mode to say, what would happen if I were to apply this inside my environment? And this is where we now flip the view of the matrix from the traffic baseline over into the simulation mode. Against my policies, this is all the traffic that would actually cause deviates from the policy that I've created. And now I can dig into this and start to see some other behavior. Okay, we've seen our database admins connected to the database tier. We knew that was bad already. We knew that was a violation. That's fine. But now we're seeing all of these other users actually doing the same thing. So I've now picked up other traffic that I didn't know. These are all risky behaviors that shouldn't be taking place. So I'm now in the position to go and do something about this, but also now in the position to say this policy is good. I will only actually block users that are actually creating risky behavior. So I've effectively simulated that policy across my environment. So I'm now back to the point where I now have actually a good segmentation policy. This is something that I can now go and use the rest of the Forescout platform to go and start to implement in the network across the campus environment, across firewalls, across data center and cloud type security controls. If we sort of broaden that out to other sort of security policies, we now have, we can now implement the IoT security policies. We now see that risky traffic. And I can now do a couple of really important things. Number one is I've now got notification. So I can go and say, create a ticket in ServiceNow to say, hey, my printers are using external NTP sources. Please go and fix that IT department because that shouldn't be taking place. So I can create these sort of notification workflows. I can create response workflows to say, well, I don't want the printers talking to the internet, so I'm going to go and kill that connection. I don't want that FTP traffic to take place. So I'm actually going to go out there and prevent that behavior in real time. I can then move on to taking the policies that I developed here and go and implementing them within the firewall, within the data center itself from our HR application perspective. So I can now go and make sure that the protection is in place. And then, of course, even when I've applied those sort of preventative controls or protective controls, this policy is still running. If something is misconfigured, we will start to see violations again. And we'll start to get the notification, we can start to take action where our security controls are broken down. So I've sort of taken you through the whole journey from a sort of end-to-end perspective from the iSegment workflow. I'm going to open this up to questions again. So we've sort of come to pretty well bang on. We've got a minute or so left. So questions. Hey, Chris, you back?
Yeah, all right, Doug. That's great. Thank you for walking us through there. So, so I hope you found that session of use. We're just about out of time there, but if you would like any further information on the Forescout solution, then we do have Marco Ramo, who's based up there in Sweden. He'd be happy to help out with any further information you require. And of course, you could just reach out to myself or directly to Doug, and we'd be very happy to go into more detail and make this content very much more specific to your environment. So so thank you very much for attending this this session this morning. We really appreciate the time that you've taken. And with that said, I think we'll close the session there. Thank you very much, and thank you, Doug.
Everybody, thank you for your time, and have a good day.
Thank you.